I never thought anything strange could happen where I grew up. The town was quiet, small enough that everyone knew everyone else, and the streets were always empty after dark. My house was at the edge of a forest, and I had walked past those trees hundreds of times as a kid. But my parents always told me to stay close. The woods aren't safe at night, they'd say, and I never questioned it much. Most evenings I would sit in my room, listening to the soft hum of the streetlights and the distant dogs barking. That night, though, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off, though I couldn't explain it. I decided to take a walk to clear my head, thinking I would just stay on the familiar path near the street and be back in minutes. The air was colder than usual, sharper, and the wind pressed against my face as I walked. I passed the first few trees and felt a twinge of unease, but I kept telling myself it was nothing. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes in a way that seemed too loud. Shadows stretched across the path, and I noticed how quiet everything had become. There were no owls, no rustling leaves, just silence. I paused and looked behind me, seeing the lights from my house growing smaller. For a second I thought about turning back, but curiosity kept me moving. I didn't want to admit I was nervous. The farther I went, the narrower the path became, and soon the streetlights were out of reach. My heart started to beat faster, not from running, but from an odd sense of anticipation. I passed a familiar bend, one I knew led back to the main road, and I felt a small relief wash over me. I told myself it was just a walk. I was just taking a short route through the forest like I had before. Nothing bad could happen. But as I continued, I noticed small things I had never paid attention to before. A broken branch here, a strange mark on a tree there. They didn't make sense, but I shrugged them off, convinced I was imagining things. I just wanted to get home. The deeper I went, the more the path seemed wrong. It twisted in ways I didn't remember. Every turn I took felt familiar at first, like I'd seen it before. But then the trees didn't line up the way they should. The forest smelled different too, damp, heavy, like something had rotted nearby. My shoes crunched over gravel that turned into dirt, and the silence pressed against my ears so I could hear my own heartbeat. I told myself to keep walking, that I knew the way, but the feeling in my chest was growing heavier. Then I started hearing things. At first it was just the rustling of branches, but soon I thought I heard whispers, faint, almost like someone was calling my name, but wrong somehow. They didn't sound human and they didn't seem close enough to find. I froze once, listening, my breath catching in my throat, and the whispers stopped. When I moved again, I thought I saw shapes shifting between the trees, figures I couldn't focus on. Every time I looked, they disappeared, leaving nothing but shadows. Panic began creeping in. I tried to run, but the path narrowed and twisted, and I kept thinking I recognized landmarks that weren't really there. My imagination was screaming at me, telling me I was lost, but a part of me wanted to see what was ahead. I stumbled over roots and rocks, my hands scraping against bark, and I felt that familiar cold creeping through the forest. The shadows seemed to stretch toward me, and then I saw a faint orange glow through the trees, like a torch. My chest tightened. I didn't know if it was someone trying to help or something worse. I hesitated, feeling a chill run down my spine, but curiosity, or maybe fear, pulled me closer. I stepped closer to the glow, my legs shaking, every nerve screaming at me to turn back. The light pulsed strangely, uneven, almost alive. As I got nearer, I saw the figure holding it. At first I thought it was a person, but the shape was all wrong, too tall, too thin, and twisted. Its limbs bent in ways they shouldn't, and its head was covered in what looked like long, ragged spikes. I froze. The torch flickered, throwing shadows that seemed to reach for me. Then it moved, slowly, deliberately, toward me. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure's eyes met mine, pale, empty, completely white. They weren't just staring, they were cutting into me, pressing against something deep inside my chest. Fear so sharp it burned filled me, and I fell to my knees. It reached out a hand. I felt it touch my forehead, cold and heavy, and a shock ran through my body, burning and freezing at the same time. I wanted to move, to struggle, but my arms wouldn't obey. My mind went blank except for one thought. I need to get out. The figure's grip loosened, and I stumbled backward, dizzy, falling to the damp earth. Behind it, shadows moved. I realized they weren't alone. Other figures, twisted and masked, surrounded me. I scrambled to my feet, my breaths coming fast and shallow. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the torch flickered and went out. The shadows seemed to vanish into the trees, leaving only a cold, unnatural silence. My legs carried me blindly down a path I didn't know, not caring where it led, just wanting to be away from them. I ran until the forest thinned and sunlight touched my face. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I don't know if anyone else saw what I saw that night or if it was just me. I can't explain it, and I don't know if I want to. But even now, years later, I feel it sometimes like a weight on the back of my neck. I can't tell if the forest is empty or if something is still waiting just beyond the trees. And every time I walk near those woods, I hear the faintest whisper in the wind, like someone calling my name. I grew up near the edge of the forest, the kind that feels alive even in silence. As a kid, I spent every summer wandering the trails, climbing over roots and watching the birds disappear into the treetops. Nothing ever scared me there, not even the shadows that stretched long in the evening. My family lived a few miles down the road, in a small house with creaky floors and a backyard that smelled of pine and wet earth after rain. Life was simple. I worked odd jobs during the week and came home to the comfort of my mother's cooking and my father's quiet presence. Most nights I'd take a walk before bed. The forest felt like home, familiar and harmless. One evening I stayed later than usual, wandering deeper than I had before. The sun had dipped behind the trees, and the cold was creeping in faster than I expected. I could hear the wind shift through the branches, and it sounded different somehow, sharper, almost deliberate. It made me pause, but curiosity kept me moving. I told myself it was just the woods, just shadows playing tricks on my eyes. Even when a fog started rolling in, thick and white, I pushed forward. There was a pull, subtle and unexplainable, that made me feel like I wasn't supposed to turn back yet. The path narrowed, and I found myself by a frozen pond I had never noticed before. The ice was thin in places, cracking quietly under the weight of fallen leaves. I knelt and touched it, hearing the faint echo of water below. Everything around me was silent except for the occasional snap of a branch. That's when I noticed it, a movement between the trees. At first I thought it was an animal, but it was too tall, too smooth, too human. And then it stopped. I froze, my breath caught. Something about it didn't belong in the forest at all. I should have turned around. I should have run. I kept my eyes on the figure, heart hammering so loudly I was sure it would give me away. It moved almost like it was gliding, with no sound at all, bending around trees that should have slowed it down. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. There was something about the way it moved that drew me in, a careful, unnatural grace that made my skin crawl. I felt a pull, like it wanted me to follow. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound, and noticed the fog twisting around it as if it were alive. The closer I got, the more I realized I could see nothing of its face. There was a shape there, but the details were hidden, shadowed, or maybe it just didn't have one. My stomach turned. Then I saw something else, thin, almost skeletal limbs that stretched from its back like they shouldn't exist. They moved with it, curling and uncurling silently, adding to the impossibility of what I was seeing. Then I heard it, the faintest soft scrape against the snow, almost like a warning. My feet moved forward before my brain caught up. I wasn't thinking about safety. I wasn't thinking about logic. I just followed. A rustle from deeper in the trees made me freeze. A child stepped into the clearing, a girl, maybe 9 or 10. She looked straight at the creature, and just like me, she didn't move. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but she didn't scream. The figure lowered itself toward her slowly, and I saw her start to shake, covering her ears. I wanted to run, to call for help, but I was rooted in place. Something about this moment felt final. The girl fell to the ground, and for a moment I thought she was dead. But her chest was rising and falling, slow and shallow, like she was still clinging to life. The figure knelt above her, its limbs twitching in ways that made my stomach twist. I wanted to look away, to run, but my body refused to obey. I could only watch. It moved with deliberate precision, pulling at her small frame. I could see the outline of bones where there shouldn't have been, the thin, unnatural extensions from its back, curling as if testing the air. And then it stopped. It held her there, and for a heartbeat everything was still. My throat went dry. My mind screamed at me to move, but I stayed frozen, trapped by something I couldn't name. The next moment was something I'll never forget. It did something to her, something violent and impossible. And yet she didn't make a sound. I can't explain exactly what I saw. It was too wrong to put into words, but her body, it was gone, changed, and yet somehow still moving. And then it happened. The figure turned toward me, It didn't move quickly, didn't rush or chase. It just looked, and I knew it could see me. Its face, or the lack of one, was the worst part. I could make out no eyes, no features, just a pale, smooth surface. Then a mouth appeared, stretching impossibly across its face, curving into a grin that I still see when I close my eyes. It was wide, too wide, full of sharp, thin teeth that didn't belong. The air itself seemed to warp. A high-pitched buzz filled my ears, like static from an old television, and the world began to blur. My knees hit the ground, and darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. I wanted to scream, to move, to run, but nothing happened. Then just as suddenly it stopped. The creature looked at me for a long moment, and I understood. I was not its target. I was spared because I wasn't a child, and yet the memory of what it had done to her stayed. When I woke, I was alone at the edge of the forest. The snow had melted in places, and the fog was gone. I never saw the girl again. I don't know why I lived, why it let me go. But I know one thing, it watches, and it waits, and if you see it, it will follow you in ways you cannot escape. I haven't returned, and I never will. The forest is no longer a home. It is something else entirely, and I still remember every detail of that night. I used to live in a small town where nothing ever happened. My apartment was on the top floor of a faded brick building, overlooking a narrow street that smelled of rain and exhaust. Most nights I'd sit at my desk, drawing or scrolling through forums for strange stories. Horror and urban legends fascinated me, though I never thought anything like them could touch me. One night I stumbled across a thread about a figure called the Hollow Man. No face, no name, just a dark outline and pictures people had claimed to capture. I was intrigued, almost obsessed. I started sketching him, trying to make him my own. My drawings were crude at first, but the more I drew, the more real he felt in my mind. I didn't tell anyone except for my roommate, Derek. He laughed at my sketches, called them creepy fan art, but he humored me. We'd joke about filming something together, just for fun. But neither of us had the patience. Still, I kept drawing. I even started carrying a small sketchbook with me everywhere. Every time I left my apartment, I'd doodle him on receipts, notebooks, anything I could find. It was harmless at first. I felt in control. The Hollow Man lived only in my drawings, only in my imagination. I liked that about him. But the more I drew, the more I felt like he wasn't just mine anymore. At first it was small things. He'd glance at my sketches and it felt like he was looking back. Not literally, of course, but a sense that the dark void of his face was aware. I brushed it off. Sleep deprivation, I told myself. I was working late nights, and my imagination had always been vivid. Then it started to spill into the real world. He'd take pictures with my phone, just ordinary snapshots of the street or my apartment, and in the corner of the frame, he'd see a shadow. Tall, thin, vaguely humanoid. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection, maybe a neighbor moving past, but it kept showing up, always at the edge of the photo, closer each time. Derek noticed too. One morning he picked up my phone after I left for work. "Why is there that thing behind you?" he asked. The first time he saw it, he laughed, thinking he had edited the photo as a joke. I didn't answer. I didn't want to admit I hadn't touched the file. It started happening in person, too. I'd feel a presence behind me while walking home, a weight pressing on my back, and every time I turned, no one was there, just shadows that seemed to stretch too long, dark shapes melting into the corners of my vision. It wasn't constant, but often enough to make me anxious. Then came the dreams. Always the same street near my apartment. Dim light, fog creeping along the asphalt. He stood at the end, faceless, waiting. I'd run, hide in doorways, but he was always closer than I expected, stepping silently, arms stretching impossibly long. I woke up soaked in sweat, heart racing. But what terrified me most was when it'd reach for my sketchbook. Pages I hadn't drawn yet had new sketches of him, drawn in perfect lines I couldn't make myself. I tried to stop. I put away the sketchbook, avoided looking at pictures, avoided mirrors. But every photo I took, every reflection in a dark window, there he was, watching, closer, always closer. By the third week I stopped leaving my apartment at night. Derek knocked, worried, asking if I was sick. I told him I was tired. That was easier than telling the truth. The Hollow Man wasn't just in my drawings anymore. He was waiting and I couldn't escape him. I don't know when I stopped fighting it. Maybe the night Derek disappeared. He'd come into my room after midnight, his face pale, holding his phone. "Hez here," he whispered. Before I could ask what he meant, he showed me the screen. A photo of us taken earlier that day. Behind me, over my shoulder, the same tall shadow leaned forward, its head almost touching mine. I grabbed the phone, but the image started to distort, the pixels bending, the figure spreading like spilled ink. Then the screen went black. We both froze. The lights flickered. It sounded like someone was dragging metal along the floor above us. Slow and deliberate. Derek ran to the door, but it slammed shut before he reached it. The sound stopped. Everything was quiet again. We just stood there, staring at each other, breathing too fast. Then I saw him. He was standing in the corner of the room right beside my desk. No sound, no movement, just standing there, as if he had always been part of the room. The same outline I had drawn 100 times. No face, no eyes, only that dark hollow where a face should be. My body wouldn't move. Derek backed away, whispering my name, but it was like I couldn't hear him. The hollow man tilted his head just slightly as if studying me. I don't remember what happened next. Just flashes. Derek screaming. The walls bending. My own voice shouting something that didn't sound like me. Then silence. When I woke up, the apartment was empty. Derek was gone. His phone lay on the floor, the last picture on it showing only me, standing in front of the window. But I don't remember posing for it. Now the drawings don't stop. Even when I tear them apart, new ones appear. On my walls, on the fogged mirror. Even inside my mind when I close my eyes. He's always there in the same stance, watching closer each time. I've come to understand what he is. He's not something I found. He's something I made. A shape given life by attention, by belief. And now he doesn't need me anymore. If you see him in your photos, don't look too long. He notices when you do.